I want to ask you a question first of all. I want to know what is going to win the day. Is it information or knowledge? What do you think out there? So everyone that's new, primarily I'm asking you this question. This is one of my favourite questions. Is it fantastic knowledge or great information? What do you think is going to win the day? Greg, tell us the answer.
It has to be knowledge.
Good boy, well done. So of course it's knowledge. Now, I don't know if you've had this before. So, the problem as I see it is that you want to know what's going on in the housing market. You want to understand what's happening with prices. Should you be buying? Should you be selling? Should you be increasing rents? Where does it all sit? So, you can open the newspaper, jump on the internet, Google a little bit, but there is a ton of different sources out there. And it's very, very hard for you to know who should you be believing and what should you be following through. So I'm sure you've had that problem happen to you before. I know it's happened to me, and I found it really, really hard. I'll give you an example. I, like most of you out there, have been to many, many auctions, and I've been excited, thinking this is a great home, only to find that the opening bid completely knocks me out of the park. And what happens? You get a bit down, you get a bit worried. You start over-analysing everything, you start looking at different areas, you start reading different articles, and before you know it, another 12 months has passed and you've done absolutely nothing. And you get confused by all this information and you don't know what to follow. So, I'm sure most of you can relate to that. Now, today's very different. In order for me to get past that and get stuck with it, I had to come up with a system. And so now I've got a system that I'd love to share with you guys, and that's part of why we do today. And I will run through that with you at the end of today's session in order to work through, to understand why all of that information that's out there is not necessarily going to be correct. It's not necessarily written by a great source. There is a ton of credible information, but not all of it is great. So, you need that system, that ability to turn that information into knowledge so that you can actually understand what you should be taking action with and where you should be going. So I think that's really, really important concept. All right, so today's session, we're going to run through two key sections. First of all, I want to update you with what's happened over the last 7 days, run through some of the stats and give you a bit of a framework to set up today's session. And then we'll get stuck into the main meaty part of the section that I know you're all dying to jump in, put your questions to the panel. I'll host it and try and moderate the guys and try and keep in check. That'll probably run for about 25 minutes. So hopefully, set yourself aside that time. We will try and keep on track. Of course, if we do go off track, we'll try and bring it back to be nice and neat. So feel free to jump in and start putting your questions in the Q&A section now. And I will read through those as we get into it. All right. So what have we seen this week? What are the major key themes? What's been going on? Off the plan, is it a good investment? There's been a terrible rap it's been given over the last sort of 12, 18 months, but I'm pretty sure that most of you that understand it, you do your research, will be able to realise what a great option that is. Property taxes for investors. A lot is going on with the ATO. We'll run through some great tips there. What is the market thinking? Are people wanting to still buy? Are they worried? Where's it going? We'll run through the latest survey. Rental increases. What are we seeing in the different regions? Where is it happening the most? And investors versus first home buyers. Where's the current market sitting? And what's been happening? All right. So first of all, before we get into that, let's run through the auction results for the weekend. Pretty strong result again, albeit much, much lower volumes. I think most of you will be aware that Melbourne has been in lockdown now for 2 weeks. We're just out for our first time today. Sydney is entering into its 5th or 6th week of lockdown, so we're obviously seeing much lower volumes. If I drill in here, you can see the clearance rates are still pretty strong in the 70s for both those major markets and about the mid-70s for the national here. This is probably the first time we've seen this year that both or one of the major markets, being Sydney and Melbourne, haven't had what's called a Super Saturday, which is more than 1,000 auctions. Probably the biggest thing that we've seen out there is that I think the stats were that Melbourne, more than half of these auctions all sold prior and I believe in Sydney it was about 65%. So now this is typically unheard of and unseen, but I think that's really these vendors being realistic in terms of they're achieving the prices that they want with this little bit of uncertainty with coronavirus, online auctions and so forth. They're just jumping in and taking those deals. So if you are thinking about it and you are thinking about going to an auction, just be aware that they can take an offer beforehand. So don't be alarmed or don't be surprised if you dawdle and you don't make a quick decision, you may miss out on the property you're looking for. All right, so what about some more forward-looking stats that we've seen? Those of you that are long-time listeners will know we love looking at realestate.com, the largest property portal here in Australia. They put forward a couple of leading indicators out there. They do is the buyers engaged and focused index, and they also do the same for renters. Now, it's not an exact science, but this gives you a bit of an idea as to what kind of activity they're seeing on the website and how that may translate into sales over the next 30, 60, 90, 6, 12 months time period. Typically, we see a lag, by the time people start looking to, actually going out and inspecting properties and then buying a property can be, for those that are laser focused, that could be 30 days. But typically, it's about a 90 to 180-day process as people go through that cycle. So typically, what we're going to see in these indications here is what we should expect to be happening over the next 6 months. If we drill into the national numbers here, the red line is for apartments, the blue line is for freestanding houses, and the black line is the combined. You can see it's been relatively flat over this year, albeit at a much higher level. You can see, sort of 18, 12, 24 months ago in 2019 versus what we're now seeing. It's still very elevated, which clearly is what we're seeing transacting in sales. I showed you those auction statistics, and that's definitely been coming through. The probably main factor that you'll see here, and I do mention this every week, but those of you that are new, is that we haven't typically seen such a big spread between the red line and the blue line, which is, as I said, freestanding homes and apartments. And I think that's definitely a response in terms of, a price barrier, a maximum price that people can afford when it comes to buying a freestanding home, and they're starting to realise that, they need to focus and look at apartments. So it'd be very interesting to see, as I said, over the next 6 months, how we actually see this translate across into actual transactions. Our local market here in Victoria, much the same, albeit very much more choppy, given that we did just have lockdown number 5 compared to the rest of the country that's pretty much had lockdown 1 and maybe number 2. We are seeing again a spread between the two types of properties, but perhaps a little bit lagged behind the national, which is more than understandable given that we're probably running 4 to 6 months behind where everybody else is. All right, let's jump into the same index for rental. Very hard to read these indexes, as I think it'd be hard for us to have a good understanding, given that a big chunk of the rental demand is definitely lower than where it was in terms of overseas students are not around, as well as the hospitality industry has been pretty much shut down for a fairly long period of time. And they are typically the bulk of people that you see renting, the younger crowd, which may or may not have moved back home with mum and dad, or perhaps gone back to where they may have originally been living in a share house rather than in these inner city markets. However, if we drill in, this is the national stats. It fell a little bit from last week. Again, it's been pretty flat. If you look at the trend, it's been fairly consistent across here, which is, as I said, a little bit odd, given that there's a hell of a lot less people in total quantum of demand, albeit still quite a strong demand in terms of the number of people looking for a new rental property, or at least in there taking those actions that the real estate believe will mean they'll transact into renting a property. If we go to our local market, much similar to the sales, you'll see it's been a little bit choppy, but still, again, slightly elevated on where it's been prior to the pandemic. These are obviously a guide, so very hard to read into them, but great to understand where we're going. And I believe it really sets up a great framework for this next section. All right, so before I open the questions to you, those of you that didn't catch the start, my name is James Maitland. I'm the General Manager here at Salvo. I've helped create more than 11,500 homes for people like everyone online today. I love doing it. Here at Salvo, we do a ton of different things, but ultimately we're all about helping you create a home. So it doesn't matter where you are on that journey. Even if you're not ready to buy yet, we might be helping you at the very start of that journey, which is renting your first property, right up to the seasoned, investor who may have their second or third property and is looking for assistance managing their property, finding the tenant, as well as those people who are looking to upgrade. So it doesn't matter where you are in that journey, you're in the right place, and we'd definitely love to help you. And I think you're going to get a ton of value from today's questions. Joining us on the panel, I've got a great host of people here. Greg Arbeck, he's been doing this for decades and decades. Jack Gian loves this market, and Lucas Karras as well, rounding out. So we're all going to be excited to run through your questions. So as I said, if you're not too sure how to get involved and how to participate, really, really simple. Two ways. The easiest and perhaps most effective way we found everyone loves doing is jumping in the Q&A. I can see there is a ton of questions already coming through. So great. I love you guys getting involved. It's obviously all about you guys being focused, getting rid of the distractions, drilling in, giving us your questions so that we can be laser focused, hopefully give you some of that knowledge that I talked about to help you sort through all of that information. If you're really brave, we haven't had anyone for a while who's been brave enough, feel free to put up your hand. That is another option, and we will unmute you and you can jump on and ask your questions. But don't worry if you don't feel brave enough. Very few people have over the past 12 months since we've been doing this. All right, that is it in terms of the introduction. So let's get stuck into this section. I'm going to try and read through the questions. So first up, I know there was a recent survey, I mentioned it at the top of this session that came out, I think it was done by finder.com, in terms of where is people's sentiment in terms of are they looking to buy and when are they looking to buy. Has anyone got the info on that survey and give us a bit of an overview as to what the results were?
Yes, James. The Finder's survey recently released the figures, which might surprise you. Is 1/7 Australians is considering to buy in the next 6 months, and half of them and looking to buy the investment, and half of them looking to buy the home for themselves in the next 6 months.
Has that sort of surprised you, that split? Is that what you were expecting to see?
This is very surprised for me. It's such strong intention for the people, the intention to buy a property on the current market, especially we just out of the latest lockdown, which is number 5 lockdown in Melbourne. Sydney was still locked down, but we're looking into the Melbourne and Sydney, both major market. In New South Wales, it's showing nearly 20% of the buyers, people, they looking to buy in the next 6 months. And also in Victoria, in the Melbourne, is nearly 15% of the people from the survey, they're looking to buy in the next 6 months. That's the very, very good figures.
So I think that's probably tracking somewhat in line with what we were looking at with those realestate.com demand index in terms of, if we look over the next 6 months, there seems to be an elevated level in terms of interest for people looking to buy, definitely. And that's translated through into that survey. So, that I think that's definitely surprised me that such a high level of people are thinking about an investment property, because, again, going back to what I said at the top of the show, all about taking that information and creating into knowledge. If you just read most of the headlines, you would be inclined to think that there are no investors out there. What have we actually seen historically over the last sort of 6 months? Are investors actually transacting, or is this just the start of them thinking about coming back into the market? Does anyone have any stats on that?
When you look at what Jack or that Finder thing was talking about, that's showing stuff that's going to be happening. But we've already seen this year from early 2021 that investor activity is actually very, very good, and we've just hit a target now where just over 9.1 billion of loans have just been written, which is a record in May for investors. So it shows that investors were sitting on the sidelines initially, but they are definitely coming back into the market and even surpassing in terms of percentages, the first homeowners who were screaming ahead dramatically, but both are still tracking very, very well.
So sorry, Greg, just to clarify, you're saying this is last quarter, investors where you saw the strongest growth in terms of them as a buyer group?
Yeah, so typically, I mean, the investor has, in terms of percentages, has risen from 23 to 28%. So there's an increase in the amount of people getting, back into investing. So the forecasts in terms of what Jack is seeing is already showing that's what you would call a leading indicator, but we've actually seen the lagging stuff is actually echoing what they're forecasting.
Okay. And what about rents? Where are they tracking nationally? And I guess drilling down into those key markets, where have we seen them? Are they growing? Are they declining? Can someone enlighten everyone on the call as to what we're seeing?
Yes, in terms of the rental value increase, which also surprised me again, and I think it will surprise everybody else again. And the CoreLogic and just released the data and shows a strong 6.6% increase in rental value increase for the last financial years. Given the fact is, for the last 10 years since 2011, the national average increase of the rental value is only 1.8%. So that's the every year in the last 10 years is only 1.8% increase average. This year, we saw the 6.6% strong increase on the rental value.
So, can I ask the question? Because I think a lot of our listeners that have got, inner city properties in Melbourne and Sydney, what sort of increases have we seen or decreases in those major metro markets? Because I'm assuming that perhaps that national figure is skewed a little bit by some of the more regional and
yes,
and particularly Queensland and WA stats. What have we seen in those key markets?
Yeah, yes, as looking into the different markets, obviously we're saying the fact is that the regional market performing well, and like the Sydney and the Melbourne, like the traditionally hot market, has shown a little bit of the decrease. That's fairly because of the border was closing and there's no international migration students, which were originally the first premium target for those people. They will come into the Australian to live in. But also we're seeing the reason for the regional rental increase, the value increase so much is because also we're having lockdown. When we remote working as be available, so as people might looking to move into the regional, there's a less restriction. So initially we have the lockdown, the people all moving to the regional, push the regional market, rental market is very higher. And but I believe because everything is slowly back to normal as we're getting vaccination, everything getting normal, and when the international borders reopening, this migration, international students coming back, the first option for them is still the Sydney, Melbourne inner city market, which was currently we're seeing a little bit of the decline, but in terms of the long-term trend, we were definitely seeing the increase for them.
Okay. So Greg, Jack gave us a ton of stats and detail there. And I did see a lot of questions coming up with people saying, no, I haven't had rent increases or my rents are still down. Just taking that on face value for a moment, why have we seen such strong, demand and actual transactions from investors, as well as potentially that trend continuing?
Well, I think they're looking at that stuff and they're going, well, it's a good time to get in now. There's some good value properties out there. And a savvy investor will look at it and say, hang on, let's get in while there's good value, buy something in a great location at a good value price, knowing that over time in the points that Jack has made, that rentals yields will increase, but also all property got to look at a long-term view, that over a long-term investment period, that the capital of the appreciation of the property will be there as well. So they're getting in while there's good value, good interest rates, and a savvy investor will say, let's get something great location on the basis that down the track, we're going to get some capital increases, and rentals will give them, they'll be getting good returns. That's why people are getting back into the market in terms of investing.
Okay, good. So for those of you that didn't catch all of that, I'll break it down to one simple thing for you. Smart investment takes time. Think of investing in real estate for the long term. Don't worry about these small short-term fluctuations. I think, all of that demand information, all those statistics, everything that the guys just ran through, ultimately can be boiled down to taking that long-term view. There will be some ups, there will be downs, but ultimately in the long run, real estate is always going to give you that positive cash flow, give you that appreciation. And I think that is where the smart people are seeing that it's not the ones to worry about what's happening right now. Obviously, you still need to buy in the right location. You still need to follow all of the fundamentals to buying the right property and a great property, but definitely it's to think about that long term. All right, so with that in mind, what about those people? I've seen some questions in terms of people saying that prices are so high at the moment. What are some different options for people out there, in terms of if they don't have the budget or they're worried that, it's going to take them another few years to save up for the deposit? What are some other options out there for people as to how they may be able to get their foot on the ladder now?
What they can do is they can get into an off-the-plan property. So
Greg, just to be quick there, perhaps maybe explain to people what the off-the-plan means. And I know the Q&A is going to blow up at the moment when people talk about Mascot Tower, Opal Towers, and so forth. Yeah. So maybe if you can help inform people about why it is such a good option, because I can see already down here on my computer screen the Q&A lighting up. So I'm glad you've given something. And for everyone that's on the line, I appreciate you guys being so passionate and getting involved in this. We will try and get through all of it. So sorry, Greg, fire away.
So some off the plan we've got to be realistic about, can be risky depending on who the developer is or who your builder is. So an absolutely crucial.
So would it be fair to say, Greg, as we say, it doesn't matter whether you're buying a completed property off the plan, you still got to follow that checklist. You still got to get that amazing location. You still got to get the right property, the right design, the right mix for that demand, demographic.
And primarily, as we talked about, location is the key. And then on top of that, make sure who you're dealing with. Look into that. When we could travel and we do seminars, and I'll shamelessly plug us, I'll first push us, understanding who Salvo are and our history. So understanding who you're dealing with, making sure that the developer has a reputable, they've got their record is very good, and who's building the property for them. So these are key things: location, understanding who you're dealing with, and then you know that you're going to be getting into something quite good.
Yeah, and so look, I think Greg took the opportunity to shamelessly plug our construction business there. And one thing that I often find getting questioned by people out there about, is off the plan right, and there's a lot of negative stories out there, is that, at the end of the day, if you find someone who has a long track record and has a pipeline that that this isn't the first rodeo and they're not going to be a one-hit wonder, then, they're all about reputation, just as we are, wanting to make sure that we find the best location, create the best product for that demographic, and get that repeat business, get those great referrals. So I think that's one of the key things when you look at it. Most of these stories that you hear about, some less than successful projects or investments, typically are from inexperienced developers that have got great flashy brochures but don't know what they're doing, or they are one-hit wonders, jumping on, trying to capitalise on some interest with some marketing and then not delivering on that product. And that's a really, really key thing to think about, because, Greg, you didn't mention, but obviously, buying off the plan allows you to get your foothold on the market today with only paying the 10% deposit.
Well, the key thing there, James, that you only would need a 10% deposit. So as long as you've gone through the key things, make sure location, the developer's good, all that sort of stuff, you then only need a 10% deposit to be able to secure something, and that allows you to So off the plan is actually good. Just make sure you follow the tips that we've provided for you.
Yeah. All right. Hopefully that's given a good overview. I've been trying to read through. Obviously, as I said, the Q&A blew up once we started that topic. Hopefully, we've given you a good insight there and we've answered all your questions. If we haven't, we will hang around at the end and try and run through those. So I am just aware of time, so I don't want to spend too much time on there because I really want to get on to. I haven't heard anything from Lucas yet, and I know he was excited, telling me all about the ATO and his love and passion for numbers and their excitement. So most people shudder when they hear the word ATO and that acronym. I know for most people when they get that dreaded message or that robocall from the ATO that they shake and tremble with fear as to what might be going on. So Lucas, tell us what's the ATO up to, particularly in terms of property and perhaps for those of us that are investors out there, what's some of the things that they're focused on and what should we be doing to make sure that we don't get caught out or put under unnecessary stress by the tax department?
Well, James, it's interesting to mention that the ATO, the tax officials are saying that the prime focus for this financial year would be property claims. And of course, that comes as no surprise, given we had the boom in home offices, increased property investments, as well as the COVID-19 rental claims. So it's very important for all of the people out there to know, to have an idea of what they can claim and what they cannot claim. Because like you said, you don't want to be on the wrong foot when it comes to the ATO. You can't escape.
There's only one man I know who just tends to laugh and giggle, which is our CFO. And I guess perhaps for him, he deals with it day in, day out. But I know you get terrified when you get that voicemail from the ATO. And I think most of our listeners out there would. So hit us, I know you're about to get into it. Give us some of those tips. Maybe give us your top 4, 5, whatever you think it is that people can drill in and focus on and think about this current tax time.
It's such an important topic. As much as I'll try to sort of make it quick, it's going to be more than 4 and 5. So people sit down,
hit us with it.
Pour yourself a glass of water. We've got a while to go. Okay. Number 1, declare full income on investment and rental properties. Okay. So it's most likely your rental income has dropped either because you had no tenants or your tenants negotiated a lower rent during the pandemic period. So you got to make sure you get the right figure and declare it correctly. Number 2, avoid mates rates. So investors can claim deductions for the period that the property is genuinely available for rent or has been rented. Now, this means you cannot charge mate rates rather than the market value or rent part of the year and then claim the full year. You can't do that. You can only claim for the period that the property has been rented.
Now, I'm surprised you even know what that word mates rates means, because whenever I've asked you to help me out, you always say, mate, there's no friendship in business and you're constantly wanting to charge me full freight. So I'm glad you managed to get that out of your mouth, Ben, and I'm going to remind you of that next time I ask.
I knew I was going to regret this. Yeah. Now, for an example, if the property is rented to a friend or family member for discounted rate, this cannot be included because this is regarded as a non-commercial rental. The income is still taxable, but you can only claim deductions up to the annual rent you have received. You also cannot claim a loss, which is not the outcome you want if you're claiming on negative gearing. Number 3, do not claim deductions on newly purchased properties. As Gregory correctly sort of pointed out earlier, that we had $9 billion worth of investment loans. This is the highest it's ever been since June 2015. You cannot claim deductions right away. Costs for repair, damage, and defects are deductible over a number of years or added to the cost of the base of the property for capital gains tax purposes. You should wait 12 months before making these kind of claims. Number 4, don't use your redraw facilities on investment mortgages for personal use. I've been guilty of that in the past. This facility is made possible that allows drawback for additional payments made on the loan. So for an example, you cannot use a redraw facility to purchase a new car. That's me.
What about a Can I buy a
I've done in the past. I've done in the past. No, an ATO would be looking into this. Trust me, I know. Now, avoid incorrectly apportioning the rental income. So when there's more than one owner in the investment property, you have to divide expenses equally and not choose the one of the two people that has a high taxable income and let them claim more. That's not allowed either. Now, avoid claims for properties not generally available for rent. For an example, if you're on a holiday home that you don't rent out and don't claim anything relating to that property in your tax returns until you sell it. Okay, ATO are keeping an eye out on properties that are not advertised on a widely seen online site, properties that are poorly maintained, homes for rent but unreasonable conditions. For example, no children allowed. You know, properties to put it more plainly, properties that turn away reasonable tenants. Okay. Now, number 7, we're coming to an end. I know I'm taking a while.
Sorry, Lucas, can I just interject there? And I think, you know, we always talk about how important it is to partner with experts in the field. And, you know, that point that Lucas just talked about there, nothing could be more important than getting the right property manager. Because one of the things that the ATO have a huge amount of staff being able to do all this digital, you know, data mining, as we talked about on the key sites. But those of you that aren't aware, the legislation has just changed in Victoria a couple of months ago. And one of those key changes is that every 2 years, you need to get an electrical and gas certification. So I'm imagining, Lucas, that's where, you know, in the next 2 years, you know, the ATO is going to be able to jump out and say, hang on a second, was this really available for rent? Because you didn't comply with the relevant state legislation in terms of having those certificates. So that's probably one where definitely you need to get that right advice and have the right property manager to make sure that you are set up and keep that, wouldn't it be?
My next one it's a very big one actually, and will apply to a lot of people. And that is, remember to claim their home office. Now, ATO said people that claimed to be working from home last year jumped by more than a third to 4.42 million. Now, this is a little bit complicated because there's 3 ways of calculating this. Now, the shortcut method is 80 cents per hour, which includes phone, internet, gas for heating, cooling, lighting, and equipment. If you choose to claim this, you don't need a dedicated work area, but you must keep a diary of the hours you work from home. Now, number 2 is the fixed rate, which comes out to 52 cents per hour. This is for those with a dedicated workspace or a home office. This doesn't include electricity, phone, internet. So, you know, and the internet, you have to claim for the hours you work, not the hours you're watching Netflix.
I was going to say, what about Spotify, Netflix, Stan? Right now, you know, my kids are smashing the internet watching the Olympics you know, with that. So you're telling me I can't claim all that overage I'm getting for all the downloads they're doing on the Olympics?
Sorry to tell you this. Now, the other one is the actual cost method, which means you use all your expenses to work out your deductions for your work, anything from cleaning to computers. Now, this is another huge one, depreciation. Depreciation for those that are not familiar with the term, depreciation is the natural wear and tear of property and assets over time. It is actually the second largest tax deduction after their loan interest. So always make sure you claim on that. Now, number two, it's a good tip, very important tip. Be careful with records. Keep accurate records for income and expenses. Information must not be changed or damaged. Must be in English, and if it's not in English, has to be translated. And a very good idea is to take photo of receipts to protect from loss or damage. And number 10, don't claim expenses for visiting rental properties. In the past, we were able to do, now we cannot. So you cannot claim the cost for travel when inspecting your rental property, or if you're going to carry out some repairs.
So we can't own a Gold Coast property and put our entire holiday trip up to the Gold Coast for a week has been deductible anymore.
We used to, but not anymore. Things have changed, and this is very important. And this is why I try to sort of cut it short. But it's so important for everybody to be up to date with all the latest rules and regulations, because you don't want to be stung by the ATO.
All right, look, that was really, really informative. I hope that most of you, were able to take note of those. I will put it up on the socials and YouTube after. So if you missed anything, you can go back, because I think, Lucas gave you a ton of information there. Some of them will be relevant for you, some won't. But I think it's always good to make sure you're on top of these, because, you don't want to perhaps make decisions or, find that it's too late. Looking back historically, you might have made a different decision. So really useful, and I do appreciate that. Even though I saw Greg rolling his eyes and getting tired with you stealing all the stage time, but I think that was a great amount of value. Now, I am conscious we've run a little bit over time, so I will just cut the questions short now. As I said, I just want to run through a few closing comments. I did talk about creating that system, and I'd love to share that system with you. So I just want to talk through that for a few minutes, and then we will hang around for those of you that want to continue asking the questions, and we're happy to keep running through those. So I want to put it to you this way. Today's been great, and I'm sure if you're still here, you've got a ton of value out of it. But, where to from here? Now, the way I see it is there are three options. The first one is you do nothing. Today was great. You don't make any changes, and maybe you do tune in again, maybe you don't. I just want to put this to you. If you don't make a change, don't expect a different outcome. So if you have been trying to buy a property, you're looking to buy that first home or upgrading, and you haven't been successful, you need to make a change. Otherwise, you're going to continue to get the same outcome. Now, the second part is go out there, take on board what we've talked about today, understand the system, understand that concept of knowledge as opposed to information, employ that tactic, go out there, make the changes, and find that home yourself. Now, that is great, and that's what I hope you do as a bare minimum. I appreciate your time today, because I know there's a lot of things you could be doing, and I hope at a bare minimum you do that. But what I really, really love is to be able to go on that journey with you. We've been doing this for decades and decades and decades. And as I said at the top of today's session, at Salvo, we're all about helping create homes. That's what we love doing. That's our expertise, and we'd love to be able to have you join us on that journey and see if you're a good fit for us, and we can help you on that journey. That is what the smart people do. That is what the rich do. They find the experts in the field, and they find how can they create that shortcut so that they get to the end of that journey quicker and can start enjoying those capital gains and that rental income sooner rather than later. So how do you do this? Well, I've thought about it long and hard, and I believe the best way for us to help explain the system to you, run through it, and get you on that right path to owning that home and creating that home as soon as possible is that we meet up one-on-one. So what I've done is I've proposed in everyone's diary, I've set aside some time over the next 5 days. There's a number of sessions available, so jump on as soon as I tell you where and book these. They go for about 15 or 20 minutes. It is the smallest amount of time commitment that you can possibly make and still expect to get a realistic outcome. So, all we're going to do is have a quick chat with you, perhaps answer a few more questions, get to understand where you are on that home buying journey, and make sure that you're a good fit for us, that we can help you out, run through some of the challenges that you've had, and then really talk about what the next steps are. So, we're not going to be able to help everyone. It's just reality. Not everyone is going to be a good fit for us. But if you're here today and you want to make that change, you want to move forward on that journey of creating a home, we'd love to join you on that journey. Whatever it is within all of our businesses can help you, we'd love to do that. So, those of you that are a bit worried, is that right? Where is it? Well, all we're asking from you is that you're focused, you're committed, you understand the concept of creating that knowledge, and you're prepared to roll up your sleeves, do that hard work, and actually make those changes. And if that sounds like you, if you're on today's session, then it probably is you. Then we'd love to work with you. We'd love you to book one of those sessions, and we'd love to see whether we can help you along that journey. So how do you do it? Really, really simple. There's 3 ways. You'll find there's a link in the chat. Jump on, book your session there. Your web browser, for those of you on Zoom, should have been redirected to the booking page. Lastly, for those of you that don't have your diaries with you, or you're unsure as to the suitable time, I will send you a follow-up email with the link, and we'd love to speak with you over the next few days. Don't delay. Most of those spots will get booked out very, very quickly. We do this every week, so if you do miss out, drop us a line. We'll try and fit you in, or we'll open up some more spots again next week. Now, I do want to just end with this really, really simple concept. Now, those of you that have been tuning in over the last few weeks will know that a couple of weeks ago, I went on a short 4-day vacation with my family up to Hamilton Island. It was fantastic. The weather was warm. We had a great time, albeit we landed back here in Melbourne to find that the very next day we were put into lockdown. But, on I think it was the first or the second day that we were there, in the evening, my eldest daughter said to me, "Dad, I'd love to walk up to the top of the hill with you in the morning and watch the sunrise." And that sounded like a great idea. Our busy lives, we often don't get to spend enough quality time. And I said, "That'd be lovely, darling. Love to do it with you." And that night, as I was setting my alarm, looking at what time the sun rises, I realised how early we had to get up in the morning. And this is supposed to be holiday. And I really, really thought about it. And I wanted to say to her, "You know what, it's too early." But I didn't. I set my alarm, and of course it went off in the morning. What's the first thing I went to do? Hit the snooze button. Now, how many of us done that? I wanted to do that, but I didn't. I got up. We walked to the top of the mountain. It was fantastic. Not just about seeing the sunrise, but that whole experience was great. I created those moments, and I loved it. Now, what I learned from this, and what I want to impart on everyone here, is that in life, we always want to press the snooze button. How easy is it to do that? But it's those people that are prepared to get up, not hit the snooze, take that action, are the ones that are actually going to start reaping those benefits. They're going to have those magic moments. They're going to create those memories. So just as I did with my daughter, I implore you to think about that. Don't hit the snooze button. Take action. Book one of those sessions, because you're definitely going to see results. As I said, it is the smallest commitment that you can make. And I really, really hope that we catch up with everyone on this line over the next week or the next month or so. So with that in mind, I said I would keep it short and sharp. I know I've gone over a little bit. However, I appreciate everyone's time in hanging around. I can see there's still heaps of people on the line. So I appreciate the dedication you've given to us attending today's session. The energy you brought, the questions that have come through have been great. I know the guys love sharing that information. Those of you that want more, if you don't know, we do this every single week. So 2:30 Wednesday, Australian Eastern Standard Time. Rain, hail as it was today, or shine, we will be here, whether we're in lockdown, whether we're on vacation, wherever it is. We love doing this. We love imparting our knowledge, and we love sharing it with you guys. So from me and everyone on the panel, I thank you very much for your time and look forward to seeing you again shortly.